Yeah, I wanted to show you what I was working on. This is the top of the unit, and I got the keyway in there and got that assembled with the belt. I mean, everything is still loose. I just kind of put it together, just see what it looks like. Now these marks here, that's where I'm going to put my little piece that rotates for the belt to come around. Belt's going to come around that little pulley, go back to that gear in the back, and then come back out and back around this track, and it's going to rotate the gear, which is going to have the plate mounted on top. Well, actually not this one, but one similar to it. This is a So let me take this apart, show you what I've done. I had to change up this mount in the front. I got the belt, got this got the keyway in there. This is the pulley that goes on there. So I got this all situated. This looks pretty good here. This is just like an idler pulley. There's nothing that, well, what drives this is the piece on top here is what drives this. This is just sitting in a little bushing right now. I just made a little bushing for that. I actually have a bearing that goes in there, but I haven't put it in because I don't want to get it stuck, because it's a press fit and I want to make sure everything's right before I put it in. It's a little needle bearing. I talked about that before. So this is the unit here, and at one time I talked about, putting the components in while it was split. But I since made this plate for the top, and now I don't see a need to. I raised this motor up, so there's really no need to put the components in while it's apart. I could put it together and then put this piece on top. This piece here, I'm going to mount it. I got with the motor raised up, it's no longer captured by these two halves. So now it just sits in there, sits in the top. And this piece in the back, I made this little plate that's going to go on there. So this plate is going to go underneath this piece, and it's going to be epoxied into here. I'll have to split that. So I was going to do the same thing on the front. I was going to mount it with some screws out here, probably on a little plate of some sort. I'm gonna have to embed the plate into the unit itself. So this whole piece will come out as one unit. A lot of wire. So what I wanted to talk about was that I had to change the mount on this part. Now, before I had this piece on there, and it went up here, and it went into these two holes here. It came along this unit, and these pieces here, this piece and this piece, they weren't here before. But what was happening was that this piece here was taking too much room on the bottom, and I'll show you why in a couple minutes. And it was hitting another part, and I tried taking that down as much as I could, but it wasn't enough. So what I ended up doing was I took this motor apart. I got these two pieces in there now. They're like little saddles, I guess you would call them. But see, they allow me to mount this motor onto this piece without taking much room. All I got is from here to there, and that's all the room that I'm using. Because down there at the bottom, there's another piece that goes down there, and it was hitting it. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get away from it. The interference fit. So what I ended up doing was I took these 4 screws out. I took this piece off the top, and I drilled and tapped these 3mm screws. Well, I tapped these holes 3mm down to this hole. It actually intersects with that hole, because that way I wouldn't have to worry about the tap bottoming out. It could go into that hole and it wouldn't hurt a single thing. It's just the drill went in there and the tap went in there, so I had a clear thread from here all the way down to here. Of course, the bolt doesn't go into this hole, but the thread goes as far as I could down here, so I get a full depth of thread here. So these little pieces, I mounted them on the side. Like I said, I took those 4 screws apart. I popped this cap off, and there was a bearing in there, some other stuff. But it wasn't that hard to get off. I just tapped it in this little corner right here, and it came off. And so I put them pieces on there in place of this. But I was using the same holes here on this mounting plate. These holes right here. So that worked out pretty good. So that's working, that's going to work. But what I did over here, this is pretty much the same as before. I didn't really change it here, but what I changed was down here on the bottom. So let me take that apart and show it to you. I got these little, I don't know what you call them, pins that go through here, and they're just held on with, I put little screws in here to hold this thing together. It's like my little alignment rods. Keeps this thing aligned when I take it apart and put it together. So, like I talked about before, was I ended up, the gear that was here, well, actually it was here, and I moved it here because I couldn't get the rotation that I needed out of this unit, because this roller was over here, and when it came up to rotate, there wasn't enough room for this to ride on that belt, so I had to move it down here. So now the rotation point is down here, and it should give me plenty of rotation both ways. So what I ended up doing here was I took this down and I made these pieces and I epoxied them into this honeycomb part, because that's all that's left. Once you take this outer layer off, the skin, or like I said before, the drywall, you get into the framework, which is the honeycomb. So I epoxied those in there, and what that does is that extends, this is where the belt rides, so that extends that part where the belt rides all the way over to the roller. And I did that on both parts. See, because the gear was up here before, I had to put that filler in there to make up so the belt would ride here and into this unit. So this is the part I wanted to talk about before. Now we really never seen it from the back side. We've seen it from the front side, which is this side. And I had to put these pieces in here because when I cut this, I had nothing to align it. I had no bolts in there because I didn't plan on this piece. I was going to affix to that piece, but I decided not to, so I had to put these pieces in here to hold this together. But this is the piece. There's this gear that goes in here like that. That's off of the motor. And then the other gear was over here that drove this up and down. And like I said, I couldn't get the travel out of it, so I moved it here. And when this piece, these two pulleys were here and the belt went across here, there was no adjustment on the belt because they were fixed. I had these brass bushings in there, and it was a fixed distance, and I couldn't adjust it. So what I did before was I had a little piece of Delrin that I had here, and I had a little radius on the end. I pushed it into that belt to make that belt taut. Now that little piece is around here somewhere, but it doesn't matter anymore because I'm not using it. So, but in the process of using that piece, it was similar to this, but it was made out of Delrin. And you move it up into that belt and you can make it tighter. There was an adjustment here. But I since made this piece to replace that piece, because this one I made with bearings. It's got roller bearings on it. and I made a pin to go through there, and I just put a little piece of epoxy on it. I was going to put little clips on it and this and that, and well, the easiest thing is just put a little epoxy on there because, you know, I didn't want to go crazy. I just want to get something that works, and then I can make it better later because things seem to change on the fly around here, so I didn't want to invest a lot of time putting little circlips on that. But anyway, this is what I made. Like I said, I got little bearings on it. This belt that was on there, this was going to ride in there, and the angle on here captured the belt to keep it lined. And the two pulleys were like that, and as I adjust this up, it puts more tension on it to make it taut. Because before it was loose. It was something similar to that. Because you can't get it perfect, you know. Between the manufacturer making certain size belts and this and that, and so then I made this thing to put tension on there to make it taut so it wouldn't slip off of the gear. Now that was going to work out good. So when I moved it down here, I really didn't want that system because then you got a piece sticking out the bottom, and you got to adjust it and this and that, and as well, if I'm going to take the time to move it down here, you know, maybe I can do something a little different. So that's what I did. This is the new setup now. So before the pulley had a little stub on it. Actually, it had a little stub on both ends because it went into the brass on one side and it went into a piece of brass on this side, just like this one here. I was going to put one down here. In fact, that's the hole for it right there. And I was going to do that, and I said, well, maybe I can do something different. You know, it's going to take a little bit, but, you know, it's going to work out a whole lot better in the long run. So that's what I did. I took it, and I cut those things off, and I turned this piece down, and I pressed this other gear. This is a 2-to-1 ratio. This is 10, this is 20. So I made a little... it's like a pillar block. There's a diameter in here, and I turn that down, and now this piece is captured by this piece, and it's a pretty good fit. I mean, it's, you know, it's not a press fit. You don't want a press fit because you want this to rotate. But, you know, you can put pressure on here, and it's a little pillar block. Now, as far as the shape is concerned, the shape doesn't mean anything. The only thing that's important is this 90 degrees here, because that fits into this piece of angle I got in here. And this radius on the top, I just put on a bandsaw and I just started plunging it just to get like a radius. I didn't cut it with a radius cutter or anything. I didn't come in with an end mill and do a radius, or I just cut it on a bandsaw because it wasn't that important. No point in wasting a lot of time. So what this is going to do is this is going to fit like this. And I got adjustment. Now the adjustment for this isn't critical at all. I mean, it fits between these two rollers, and it doesn't matter if it's up here or here or here. It doesn't matter. That's why I have this slot kind of elongated, so I got an adjustment back and forth, little adjustment. I don't need much. But the adjustment on this side isn't critical, but it's the adjustment on this side that's critical. So now the belt is here, I don't even know if this is the right belt. I got 2 or 3 of them laying around here. Now this one's too big, but it gives the idea of what's going on here. So when this belt is attached to this one, which is this one, actually it goes on this side, because this is where the motor mounts. I'm still using the brass on this side. So that goes in there. And then this piece goes in here. You'll see I have a hole in the back, and I got a slot on this side. I don't know if you can see that. So what happens is that fits in there, and I cut the corner away so I would have clearance in the corner there. So this is going to slide on that piece of aluminum. It's going to start somewhere over here, then it's going to go, then as you tighten it, it pulls to the back. So there's a screw in the back that pulls it, and then the screw on the bottom, it follows that slot, and then when you get the right tension on it, you tighten this screw and it locks it in place, and the screw in the back holds it in place. You don't need much in the back. Then like I said, the one on the bottom locks it in place. So that's going to go in there like that. Actually, it's going to be somewhere around here, because what I did was I put tension on that belt, and I had this assembled, and I put this spacer in here. I think it's 3/16, so that when the belt was at the proper tension, the 3/16 spacer, with the 3/16 spacer, that's where I epoxied the piece of aluminum in place. So when I pull the 3/16 spacer out, it gives me that adjustment that I need to make it tight. So that's what I wanted to show you, was that now I got an adjustment in there. Actually, it goes like that. See, it'll end up somewhere around here with the belt being tight. Then, if the belt wears a little bit or gets a little bit loose, I can slide it backwards a little bit more. But what was happening was that when the motor was installed with this piece, it was hitting this piece right here. This corner right here was hitting this flange on this pulley. So I tried to, like I said, I tried to cut this back, and then the other alternatives were to push this pulley out further, or cut this flange off of here, or cut it down. But I can't really push the pulley out because I got this recess in the part where the belt rides. See, the belt rides inside that recess. So I really can't push the pulley out. I could, but it's a lot of work, and I don't want to do that. So I had to come up with a different mounting system for the motor. But I think this will work out a lot better because now I got an adjustment. The adjustment's built into the unit itself. And I don't have that other piece I got to push in there and let it ride on the bearings and this and that. And you know, I get this right. Maybe I can contour this over so it's enclosed. But of course, there's going to be, maybe I could put a little hatch in the bottom to cover that so that you know, water or oil or whatever chips don't get in there. I could put a little hatch there, but for the moment I'm going to just leave that open. I got to make sure this thing works before I worry about little details, you know. So I had to do a lot of grinding, a lot of cutting, a lot of fitting, and I was working with model airplanes for over 20 years, so building stuff like this was not a big issue for me. But of course, you had to be careful you didn't cut into an area you don't want to cut into, or cut the part. You know, you take too much off, you end up cutting this part in half, and then then you're really screwed, you know. But I was careful, so I put little blocks in here to add some strength to it, so the epoxy has something to stick onto. There was no need to fill all this in because this little block here and that little block there should give it plenty of strength, because it's going to pull against this piece in the back. But yeah, I think that'll work out a lot better. I like that. You know, you got a little adjustment there, and it's built in. And this piece, it's strong enough to where, you know, it's going to take the force of this outside belt, and it is also going to take the force of this inside belt. It's going to go around those two pulleys. So I think that'll work out pretty good. You had to be careful when I cut this, because if I made a mistake, I would have had to buy a whole nother piece, and that was like $30. So I was careful with it and checked everything twice. But looks like it's going to work pretty good. Yeah, I was going to put a keyway in here, this and that, and as well, you know, I'll just leave it, you know, 5 or 6 tenths over and just press it on there. And I mean, if it came out too loose, I would put a little Loctite on it, but it'll work. So that's where I am now. I gotta drill these out, because I made these pulleys. I just did that this morning. I made these new pulleys. So I'm going to put my bearings in them. I bought these bearings a long time ago. They're what is it, 5mm on the inside, and I don't know what it is on the outside. But I'm going to press 2 of them into this piece, one on the bottom, one on the top. And I was going to use a 1032 screw and mount that, but a 1032 is just a little bit loose. But that was the idea from the beginning, was to just use a 1032. But it's about 10 thousandths under that 5mm. So then I thought, well, why don't I just get a 5mm bolt put in there? It should be nice and snug. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get 2 5mm bolts And if I got to take just a little bit off the outside the thread for it to fit, I will. But that's going to mount up here on the front. That'll be my roller for the belt. Then when I put the hole in here to mount this on a plate, obviously I'm going to have to use some kind of flathead screw. I really don't want to go with a 632. I want to go with at least a 832. But maybe I have to go with a 632. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I had a crazy idea about making my front mount. I was going to use a piece of angle. This was a piece I had left from something else. I was going to mount that there. Of course, I'd have to cut this corner away. That would have to be gone. But then I was going to mount the hole there, and I was thinking, well, this would be nice and stiff because I could put epoxy all the way down here, but then I'd have to move that over, this and that would weaken it even more, and it's just, I mean, it's just too beefy. You know, it doesn't need to be that strong. So I'm gonna have to get a little plate and well, it'll only be like that big. This will be cut away, but mount it there so I can mount that plate to it. That way I could keep this as a unit and just drop it in here, and if I need to do something to it, I could take it out as a unit with the motor and everything. So I think that'll work out a lot better, because originally my idea was to put this motor inside here, and it was captured by these pieces, but the motor was down low. But now I raised it up, so that it gives me all kinds of opportunity to do other things with it. Before it was way down here because I was only using the top piece of it, but now it's up here. So that opens up a little window for greater things. And that's about where I am now. I ordered the electronics for the top piece. I got the Arduino in, I got the shield, I got the power supply. I'm waiting on that little 50-100 UF, I don't know what it is, that little round part. Waiting on that. And when that comes in, I'll get that together. Want to put this together and watch this thing rotate. So I guess we'll talk at you later. Okay, bye.